Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the biting wind, the frost-covered fields, and the shivering wooden cottages of the Middle Ages. Not as a noble wrapped in velvet, but as a peasant trying desperately to not freeze solid. This isn't a fairy tale winter. This is cracked lips, numb toes, and sleeping beside goats for body heat. You're not going to glide across the snow like a Hallmark character. You're going to crunch through frozen mud, wrapped in a blanket that smells like everything that's ever happened inside your house. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's still awake across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air stings your nostrils the moment you step outside. Not the kind of sting you get walking out of a refrigerated supermarket. This is sharper, wetter, like the cold is personal. Like it's trying to sneak into your lungs and redecorate them with icicles. It's late afternoon, but the sun already slinks low behind the trees, casting long blue shadows across the dirt. Snow is rare in your village. When it comes, it's slushy, dirty, and full of boot prints. But the cold is constant, lingering, patient. You feel it in your fingernails, in the marrow of your bones, in the ache behind your teeth. And you've got maybe 2 hours before full darkness. 2 hours to prepare. You start with firewood. It's never enough. There's never enough. You pull your cloak tighter and trudge toward the pile near the back of your cottage, more twigs than logs. You pick through it quickly, grabbing the driest pieces, praying they haven't been rained on or marked by the neighbor's wandering goat. In wealthier homes, you'd have a stack of seasoned logs beside the hearth, maybe even a woodshed. But you're a peasant. You gather what you can from the edge of the Lord's woods without being noticed. If they catch you, you'll pay a fine, or worse, lose your hand. You think about that every time you bend to pick up a stick. Back inside your cottage is a dim box of straw and sweat and smoke. The walls are wattle and daub, which is a nice way of saying sticks, mud, and whatever insulation the wind hasn't clawed through yet. The thatched roof sags like it's depressed. The air smells of ash, old onions, and the very particular scent of damp wool left too close to a tired body. You crouch by the hearth and blow on yesterday's coals. Nothing. You blow harder. Still nothing. A few wisps of smoke. Then finally, flame. You feed it slowly, a twig at a time, coaxing it into life like a nervous animal. Eventually, the fire begins to crackle. The cottage doesn't get warm exactly, but it gets less cold. That's the best you can hope for. Next, the shutters. There's no glass, just wooden boards you pull shut and latch with a bit of leather cord. You stuff straw into the cracks to keep the wind from slipping in sideways. You push a sack of flour against the bottom to block the draft. It works, kind of. Clothing is a strategic operation. You don't have a wardrobe, you have a rotation of maybe 3 garments, and 2 of them smell like wet goat. Your underlayer is linen, if you're lucky, then wool, then another layer of wool. You wear your cloak inside because the cottage might be warmer than outside, but it's not indoors, in the way you're thinking. It's just less windy. You wrap a scarf around your neck and tie a strip of cloth around your ears. Your mittens are made from leftover sleeve bits. Your shoes? Basically leather bags. They do not keep out the cold. They do keep out most of the mud, though one of them is definitely hosting a small hole that's become a door for ice water. You check the roof, not the outside, you can't reach that. The inside. You look up and count how many drips are falling from between the thatch bundles. 2, not bad. You move your sleeping mat a little to the left, just in case. Outside again, you fetch water. From the well, a quarter-mile down the path. The water's already got ice crusting around the top of the bucket, and it numbs your fingers when it sloshes. You walk quickly, breath billowing in clouds. Your toes curl involuntarily. Back at the cottage, your host family is moving in slow, practiced motion. The mother peels a turnip near the fire. The father stirs something in a pot, a thick barley stew that smells promising. The children are wrapped in old shawls and huddled on a bench. No one talks much. You save your breath in winter. Literally. The air steals it too fast. Historians still argue how cold it really got in medieval villages. Some records suggest the winters were harsher than today, especially during what's called the Little Ice Age in the late Middle Ages. Others say the cold was tolerable, but the lack of heat and nutrition made it feel far worse. One thing they agree on, peasants had to fight the cold with almost no tools and even less mercy from nature. Tonight is already colder than yesterday. You hear the wind beginning to howl through the chimney hole. You place a wooden board across it, leaving just enough space for the smoke to escape. You hang a bit of damp cloth across the doorway, trying to slow the draft. Your hands are cracked. Your lips bleed when you smile. You don't smile often in winter. But now you've done what you can. The fire's alive. The soup's bubbling. The walls are mostly sealed. The roof's holding. You'll make it through this night. Probably. You've built your fire, patched the window cracks, layered every inch of your body in scratchy wool and damp-smelling linen. But now comes the real challenge of a medieval winter night. Actually going to bed without turning into an icicle. Let's talk about where and how you sleep. There is no mattress, not even a sad little cot. Your bed is a sack of straw. That's it. Straw that's been stuffed into a coarse linen tick and laid on the floor near the hearth. And when I say near the hearth, I mean just barely close enough to maybe feel the faintest hint of heat if the wind isn't howling through the door. You don't have a pillow. You have a rolled up cloak if it's not already on your back. You don't have sheets. You have layers of rough wool, maybe a spare cloak thrown over the straw, maybe an old blanket that smells like 4 generations of human suffering. And that's it. If you're lucky, you're sleeping indoors. Plenty of people, especially servants, shepherds, or those too poor to own even the humblest hovel, sleep in barns, or stables, or lean-tos with more holes than walls. You crouch beside your mat and brush off the top layer of straw. A few beetles skitter away. You nod. That's normal. You check for dampness, because straw is always threatening to mold. Then you toss your cloak across the top, climb in, and curl into a fetal position. The warmth from the hearth, already fading, the stone floor underneath your mat, still colder than a nun's disapproval. You shift. The straw crunches under you. It jabs through the ticking in 5 places. You sigh. Sleeping arrangements here are a team effort. You don't get your own bed. You don't even get your own side of the bed. You share, everyone shares. Tonight there are 5 people and 1 dog in the room. The dog gets the warmest spot, a barouche spot right by the hearth. Not because he's spoiled, but because he keeps your toes from turning black. He's a little furnace with fleas and no boundaries. The children sleep 2 to a mat, bundled up so tightly in shawls that you can't tell whose elbow is whose. The parents lie near the doorway, wrapped in each other and whatever rags haven't already been sewn into next week's tunics. You, as the newcomer, take the corner by the wall. It leaks. Of course it does. You lie there in your cocoon of hope and straw and quietly try not to freeze. Now, let's talk about sleep posture. You do not sprawl. You do not stretch. You curl into a ball, hands under your armpits, knees to your chest, chin tucked, nose covered. Because every exposed inch is an open invitation for frostbite. You've heard stories. Feet turning black, fingers going numb and never waking back up. You wrap a strip of cloth around your ears, another across your mouth. Your breath instantly turns the fabric damp, which only makes it colder. You sigh again. That's also normal. You listen. The fire crackles low. Someone coughs. A child rolls over and mutters something about beets. You hear the dog sneeze. Then there's a long, stretching silence. And you notice something you didn't expect. It's not quiet. Because even in the stillness, the night is full of noise. The wind breathes through every crack. It whistles like a ghost in mourning. Sometimes it hammers the shutters. Other times it just whimpers across the roof. You hear something scurrying in the thatch above you. Could be mice, could be a rat, could be a cat fighting a rat. You hope the cat wins. Down the road, someone's chimney collapsed last week in a sudden storm. The family slept in the stable for 2 nights while their house dried out. You wonder how they are. You wonder what they'd give for even this tiny creaking bed. Historians still argue whether peasants truly suffered from the cold or simply adapted to it. Some records mention families losing children to frost in their sleep. Others describe deep winter as a time of hibernation. Less movement, more rest, as though human beings turned into reluctant bears for 3 months out of the year. You shift again. A bit of straw sneaks under your collar. You scratch. The dog stirs. Then someone rolls over behind you and plants their frozen toes directly on your thigh. You gasp. They grunt. No one apologizes. Because warmth is communal. It's not polite. It's not neat. It's desperate. People huddle. Families tangle. Grandparents clutch infants. Parents curl around children. Friends pile together. If you're lucky, your neighbor has a hot temper and radiates heat like a chimney. If not, well, you pretend. And yes, sometimes animals sleep inside too. Not just the dog, goats, chickens. If the weather's bad enough, they get brought into the cottage at night. Not for company, but because they're valuable and they throw off heat. One goat in the corner shuffles and snorts. You lie still and think about tomorrow. More cold, more smoke, more frost in your boots. You think about summers that feel like dreams now. Bare feet, soft breezes, sun-warmed stone. You wonder if you'll ever feel warm again. Then someone farts. Loudly. You blink, someone else giggles. The mother hisses, "Sleep!" and everything goes quiet again. You smile into your scarf. Because it's cold, yes. Bitter, biting, miserable. But it's also survivable. And that's what matters. You don't have comfort. You don't have central heating. But you have bodies, breath, and the stubborn, ridiculous will to wake up one more day. You pull your cloak tighter. And slowly, you sleep. You wake up and realize 2 things almost immediately. 1, you are still alive. And 2, you're pretty sure you fused with your cloak. The cold didn't kill you in your sleep, but it did glue the edge of your blanket to your face with a delightful mix of drool, breath condensation, and your own nose trying to retreat into your skull overnight. You peel it back slowly. It crackles like a wet leaf. The fire has died down to a single glowing ember. It casts no heat. The dog is gone, probably off raiding someone else's warmth. You curl your toes and feel nothing. That's not good. You curl them again and feel a tingle, slightly better. You exhale and watch the cloud of breath drift lazily in front of your face. Yep, still winter. Everyone's stirring now, slowly. Groans, coughs, a thud as someone bumps into the beam above their head. A kid sneezes directly onto the floor. His sister kicks him, gently. The morning dance begins, and no one takes anything off, not a single item of clothing. In fact, you put more on, because here's the truth. In winter, peasants basically live inside their clothes. The idea of undressing is hilarious, impractical, possibly deadly. You might get bathed once every few weeks, maybe, but other than that, your tunic is your second skin. And so is the one under it, and maybe even a third if you're fancy. Today you're wearing a linen undershirt, once white, now oatmeal colored, a wool tunic, itchy and slightly damp at the hem, a second tunic layered on top, slightly less itchy, a cloak made from wool patched with something that might have once been a curtain, a belt holding it all together, 2 pairs of socks, one of which is technically a scarf, leather shoes that used to be boots, now they're just foot suggestions, mittens made from felted wool in desperation. And still you're cold. The trick isn't just what you wear, it's how you wear it. You tuck in every edge, you wrap scarves over hoods, you layer linen under wool to keep the sweat from soaking into your outer layer. You never ever expose your ankles unless you're trying to die dramatically. And you sleep in all of this, always. Because taking it off means you have to put it back on. And if you think that's easy when everything is frozen and slightly damp, you are very much mistaken. You walk outside and the air slaps you like it's personally offended by your existence. Your breath fogs, your eyelids twitch, your nose tries to shut itself. You press forward anyway, crunching across half-frozen mud, cloak dragging behind you like a defeated flag. You make it to the well, lower the bucket, and splash some icy water onto your face. Instant regret, but it wakes you up. A woman walks past you wearing a bundle of shawls and what might be an entire sheep. She nods once, you nod back. No one wastes words this early. You both know if you open your mouth too wide, your teeth might mutiny. Back home, the fire's being coaxed back to life. You hold your fingers near it. Not close, never close. You've seen what happens when a half-numbed hand touches flame. Burns are easier to get in the winter than you think, because you don't feel the damage until it's too late. The children warm stones near the hearth, then wrap them in cloth and tuck them under their cloaks. Not for bed this time, just to carry around like medieval hot water bottles. One girl ties hers to her waist like a belly stone. She says it keeps her kidneys from freezing. You don't ask where she learned that. You help your host wrap the door frame with extra straw. It doesn't stop the cold, it slows it. That's all you're doing here, slowing the cold, delaying it, negotiating with it. You drink something hot, thin ale, or maybe a barley infusion with a chunk of last week's onion. It burns going down, you shiver anyway. Historians still argue about what medieval clothing was. Actually, like for peasants, sumptuary laws limited what colors you could wear. Bright reds, blues, or purples were for nobility. Peasants wore browns, grays, dull greens. But those dull colors weren't a fashion choice. They were the palette of poverty. They were made from onion skins, nettles, and soot. You see someone wearing a tunic that's more patched than fabric. It flaps as he walks. You're not judging, yours is starting to do the same. Lice liven your seams, fleas love your socks, mice chew holes in anything you leave on the floor. And yet, these clothes are everything. They're armor, they're your tent, your bedroll, your blanket. They're soaked in your sweat, your smoke, your history. You don't clean them often. Soap is precious. Water is freezing. So you beat them with a stick or hang them over smoke to scare the bugs away. That counts. You adjust your belt, pull your sleeves down, rewrap your scarf for the third time this morning. There is no such thing as overdressing in the winter. By midday, your clothes are warm from body heat, but that warmth is fragile. You hold your arms tight. You move just enough to stay flexible, not enough to sweat. Sweat is the enemy. Wet wool is the devil's invention. Once you're wet, you're done. Still, when the sun breaks through the clouds and the wind dies for half a moment, you stand tall. You breathe in, and you don't shiver, not for a full 5 seconds. That's victory. You bend over, brush some frozen mud off your pant leg, and sigh into the wind. It's not even noon, and your nose has gone numb for the third time. Your cloak flaps uselessly behind you like a soggy flag. You need heat. Not tomorrow, not tonight, now. And since you're a medieval peasant without a fireplace, you can trust, or a blanket that doesn't smell like a goat's armpit, it's time to get creative. Because when the cold comes for you, and oh, it will, you have to fight back with whatever's lying around. You start with the hearth. Fire is life, everyone knows that. But wood, that's luxury, especially dry wood. Most of the forest belongs to the Lord, and taking so much as a fallen twig without permission could get you fined or worse. So peasants use what they can get. Dung. Yes, that's right. Dung is your fuel now. You gather animal dung, cow, sheep, whatever's handy, and shape it into neat patties. Then you leave them to dry in the sun, like grotesque little cookies. When winter hits, they burn surprisingly well. Not great, not pleasant, but functional. They smell like everything you never want to think about again, but they keep the fire going. Alongside dung, there are peat bricks, muddy, spongy masses cut from bogs and dried into blocks. They're smoky, they crumble, but they'll burn. And when your fingers are turning purple, you don't argue with a peat brick. Sometimes people burn bones, or scraps of old cloth soaked in animal fat. One man down the road once lit a fire using only fish guts and a prayer. It worked, and it smelled like a haunted ocean for 3 days. You add a dried dung patty to the hearth. The fire sizzles, catches, and a gentle warmth creeps toward your frozen toes. But heating the house is only part of the battle. The cold gets everywhere. So you insulate, not with foam or fiberglass, with straw. You stuff it in the gaps between the beams. You line the walls with rushes. You press old rags into holes around the doorframe. Some folks use moss, or mud mixed with hair, or, no kidding, dead leaves sewn into cloth sacks. It's not cozy, it's a war of attrition. Underfoot, you've laid down bracken. Bracken is prickly, but it lifts your feet off the icy ground just enough to fool your nerves into thinking you're warm. You step softly, hoping no beetle families have moved in. Windows are sealed shut. There's no glass, just wooden shutters and whatever cloth you can find to drape across them. Some people smear animal fat on stretched parchment and nail it over the window frame. The light it lets in is yellow and sad, but at least the wind stays out. There's a rock by the fire. It's your favorite rock. You heat it for an hour, then wrap it in a rag and tuck it into your blanket at night like it's a beloved pet. You've named it warmth. You do not joke about warmth. Your host mother has a different trick. She boils a large iron pot of water and places it in the center of the room. Then she places 3 stones around it, creating a little circle of steam and heat. It's basic thermodynamics powered by desperation. In bed, you carry a warming pan, essentially a metal pan filled with embers and placed between layers of straw and blanket before you crawl in. Dangerous? Absolutely. You've heard stories. Whole mattresses catching fire, but it beats frostbite. You make tea from pine needles. You crush mustard seeds into a paste and rub it on your chest. You drink broth so hot, it scalds your throat and makes you cry a little. That's how you know it's working. Historians still argue how cold winters really were in peasant homes. Some say temperatures inside dropped nearly as low as outside. Others believe that tight quarters in animal body heat made homes surprisingly tolerable. But everyone agrees heating was a full-time job, and everyone helped. Children were sent to gather turf, peat, moss, even dead twigs. Women twisted straw into ropes and burned them like candles. Men dug shallow holes in the floor and built sunken hearths to trap warmth low to the ground. Even animals got involved, not on purpose, they just existed. Chickens under the bed, a goat near the door, the family dog curled beside the baby. Their breath, their movement, their stink, all of it contributed to the sacred goal, not dying of cold. Once, a local widow filled her walls with feathers, not stuffed them, filled them, cracked open the wall slats and poured bird fluff into every gap like some kind of medieval insulation queen. It worked. Her house smelled like goose for months, but it worked. And sometimes people just left. Entire families moved into stables for the winter. It sounds backwards, but stables were warmer. Low ceilings, hay on the floor, cow heat. You've never felt love for a cow before, but after one night beside Bessie the Warm, you're reconsidering everything. It's all temporary, of course. The cold never leaves. It just pauses, watches, waits for you to slack off. Forget a crack, skip a fire, leave your socks a little too damp. You never let your guard down. Even now, sitting by the hearth, cheeks rosy from the fire, you feel the cold like a threat in the corner. It's in the floor, the walls, your sleeves. But you're not beaten. You've got your dung bricks. You've got your goose feather walls. You've got your rock named Warmth. And tonight, you will not freeze. Your nose twitches. Something smells edible. Not good, but edible. It's warm, at least. That's the best you can hope for on a winter night in a medieval peasant's life. You shuffle toward the hearth where a blackened pot hangs over the fire. It's been bubbling slowly for hours, too slowly. Firewood is precious. You don't waste it boiling anything fast. You peer into the pot. What greets you is a chunky, glistening mass that might generously be called stew. It's mostly barley, some wild onion, a few chopped roots, parsnip, turnip, possibly yesterday's rutabaga making an encore. There's a single strip of something dark floating on top. It might be meat, it might be hope, it might be both. Welcome to night food. In the Middle Ages, dinner wasn't about luxury. It wasn't even about pleasure. It was about one thing, warmth. You need something hot in your belly before bed, not just to fight hunger, but to literally generate heat. Food equals firepower in your core. The more you eat, the warmer you'll stay, for a few blessed hours anyway. For a few, you sit on a stool and accept your portion in a bowl so chipped it whistles when the wind blows across it. You wrap your hands around it like a sacred relic. You don't even wait. You slurp. It's hot, gloriously hot. It burns your tongue, your throat, your memories of lunch. It tastes like garlic and earth and something unidentifiable, possibly medicinal. You don't care. You slurp again. Around the fire, everyone eats slowly, carefully. No one talks. Talking means letting heat escape your mouth. You watch the steam rise from the pot and try to guess which ingredient produced that odd floating bubble. The guesses are not comforting. Tonight's meal is better than usual. Why? Because someone caught a rabbit. You hear the whispers earlier. A snare, a lucky trap. The meat is already gone, what little there was, but the bones have been simmered into the soup all afternoon. You taste them in the broth. A richness, a depth, a faint trace of animal that isn't just boiled cabbage. You look around. A boy sips with his eyes closed. A grandmother dips her crust of bread like it's the Last Supper. Even the dog is quiet, watching, tail curled tightly around his paws, waiting for scraps that won't come. You have exactly 4 bites of stew left, and you already miss them. The bread is stale, it always is. You dunk it anyway, softening it in the broth until it becomes edible. The outer edge remains dangerously sharp. You once chipped a tooth on a crust and pretended it was just extra crunch. Tonight there's also a bonus, a bit of cheese. It's hard, waxy, probably older than at least 2 of the children here. You scrape it with your knife and melt the shavings on a rock by the fire. You eat it off the blade like it's a feast. It tastes faintly of goat and strongly of dust. Dessert? Don't be ridiculous. But if you're really lucky, there might be a baked apple. Not fresh, dried and rehydrated with a little ale and sprinkled with crushed nuts. If someone remembered to forage nuts before the snow, you've had it once, you still dream about it. Mostly though, warmth comes from inside. Weak, warm, sour. Everyone drinks it. It's not about alcohol. It's about calories and safety. Water might give you the runs. Ale just makes you burp. You sip and feel it spread like a slow, sleepy fire in your chest. And then the ladle scrapes the bottom of the pot. That sound, a deep, hollow drag, means dinner is over. Bowls are licked clean, literally. The dog gets what's left, a smear of barley, a wet flake of turnip. He licks the bowl like it owes him money. And then the fire is stoked one more time. The pot is rinsed with a splash of cold water and left by the hearth to dry. Spoons are wrapped and stored. Bread crusts are placed on a shelf too high for rats, though you suspect one of them has a ladder. You lean back, belly warm, eyes drooping. And now the real battle begins, holding on to that warmth. You take a hot stone from near the hearth. You wrap it in cloth and press it to your stomach like a second heart. It helps. For now. The children curl up together like puppies. The oldest boy tucks his arms under his knees and wraps his tunic over his feet. The grandmother mutters something about St. Cuthbert and covers her head with a sack. You climb into your corner and wrap your cloak tighter. The stew is working. Your blood feels slower, thicker, like it's wrapped in wool. You breathe deep. You feel not comfortable, but not miserable, which is a victory. Historians still argue what peasants actually ate in winter. Some say it was mostly bread and ale. Others point to root cellars, stored beans, dried fish. Some families smoked meat, some fermented vegetables. But all agree on one thing: warm food at night could mean the difference between waking up with frostbite or just a stuffy nose. You think of tomorrow's breakfast, leftover stew, thinned with water, maybe oats, maybe nothing. But that's tomorrow. Tonight, you've eaten, you've warmed up, you might sleep. You shift deeper into your straw, feel the warmth still lingering in your chest, and whisper a silent thank you to the rabbit that didn't make it. You're full. You're still cold, but you're full. The fire crackles low, reduced to red embers and the occasional reluctant snap. The stew is gone, the bowls are stacked, the hearth glows faintly, and that's your only light now. You wrap yourself tight and lie down, but the cold still waits. It lingers in the air, just out of reach of the coals, creeping along the floor like smoke in reverse. It curls under doors, pushes through the cracks in the thatch, and slides down your spine even beneath 3 layers of wool. So you do what every medieval peasant does when warmth alone isn't enough. You huddle. It's not romantic, it's not graceful, it's not particularly clean. But it works. You shift onto your side and scoot closer to the others. A kid's foot bumps your thigh. Someone else's elbow is suspiciously close to your eye socket. You nudge a dog tail out of your face. It's fine. Everyone's doing the same thing. There's no privacy, no personal space. The concept doesn't exist. It's you, 5 other people, and a confused goat all packed into a room no larger than a garden shed. Everybody is a heat source, and nobody apologizes for it. You pull the blanket over your head to trap your breath. It smells like soup and wool, and the faint tang of humanity. But it's warm. You breathe it in, you adjust your legs. Someone groans, someone else shifts, murmuring something about cold beans. You don't ask. The baby, curled up between her parents, starts to fuss. Her mother rolls over and slips a warm hand over her chest. The baby calms instantly. The warmth of touch in this world is more than comfort. It's survival. The goat grunts in the corner, steam rising gently from its nostrils. You're not even kidding. There's a goat. She's old, grumpy, and invaluable. She gives milk during the day and warmth at night. Her body heat alone raises the room temperature by 2 degrees. She also snores, loudly. The dog, meanwhile, is curled at your feet. You shift, he growls. You shift again, and he shoves his head under your cloak like it's been reserved for him. You accept it. His breath is warm. His fleas, unfortunately, are mobile. Still, he's warmer than your pillow. You let him stay. There are unwritten rules to medieval huddling. Feet go to the center, heads toward the walls. Nobody hogs the blanket. Nobody complains when someone else accidentally drools on their arm. Everyone agrees that snoring is better than freezing. And then there's lice. You pretend they're not there, but they are. You can feel them moving occasionally, especially when things get, too warm. You scratch discreetly. So does everyone else. A good huddle includes a shared agreement to not mention the scratching. Because tonight, you're not just a collection of humans. You are a collective furnace. One tangled, snoring, wheezing pile of life. You curl tighter. There's a bump behind you, your host's son turning in his sleep. His knee jabs your back. You push it gently away. He doesn't wake. You're all half asleep most of the time anyway. Fully alert sleep is a luxury for people with doors that actually shut properly. In the flickering shadows, you hear someone whispering a prayer. Not the kind you say out of piety, the kind you mutter out of hope. For warmth, for safety, for spring. Historians still argue whether sleeping communally was cultural or just necessary. Did people grow up more comfortable with each other? Or did they quietly resent every elbow to the ribs for 40 years? Probably both. But one thing's certain, in the absence of central heating, the body becomes the blanket. Sometimes couples sleep apart in winter, not because they're angry, but because both of them are needed on opposite sides of the room to spread warmth more evenly. You've heard stories of siblings, grandparents, even neighbors all sharing the same mat when times got really cold. And yes, lice spreads fast, but you'll deal with that later. For now, your breath joins the rhythm of the others. The sound of 5 people exhaling at once. One wheezy, one soft, one like a whistle through teeth. It's music, the symphony of not being alone. You think back to warmer nights, summer on the grass, cool air slipping through open windows. You think about stars, crickets, nights when you didn't need another human body pressed against you to stay alive. But this winter is long, so you keep huddling. The wind rattles the shutter. The fire snaps once, then settles. The dog sighs deeply and thumps his tail against your ankle. You're not comfortable, but you're not freezing. And that's enough. You drift into sleep, shoulder to shoulder with strangers and friends and livestock. You dream of warmth, of blankets that don't itch, of beds with room for arms and legs to sprawl, of pillows stuffed with feathers instead of hay. And when you shift in your dream, the goat shifts beside you in real life and lets out a low boom. You don't even flinch. Because this is winter survival. It's not elegant, it's not clean, but it works. Something's burning. You open one eye, just barely, and see a red glow at the edge of the hearth. Not flame exactly, not yet, but the coals are flaring and the edge of the firewood is blackening in a way that says, hey, if nobody intervenes in the next 5 minutes, this cottage is going to get a whole lot warmer. And then, very much not. You blink again. Your brain catches up. It's your turn for fire duty. Congratulations. You groan softly, peeling yourself away from the warm knot of humans and animals tangled beside you. The dog lifts his head, just enough to give you the world's most judgmental look before burying his nose back in your cloak. The goat shifts but doesn't wake. A child nearby snores. Everyone else gets to keep sleeping. You do not, because someone has to watch the fire. In the Middle Ages, letting the fire go out wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous. Relighting it required precious tinder, dry twigs, and often the goodwill of a neighbor. And on a freezing winter night, it could mean the difference between sleep and frostbite. You shuffle toward the hearth, cloak dragging, feet numb. The coals are brighter now. One log has slipped and is sending up little angry sparks. You reach for the fire iron, basically just a bent stick of iron that's seen better centuries, and poke the log back into place. It groans, then collapses with a satisfying hiss. You add another piece of wood, one of the small ones. The good stuff is saved for dawn. Then you settle onto the stool and begin your shift. It's a strange job, watching a fire. There's no clock, no hourglass, just time stretching out in front of you, like the frozen road to the next village. You listen to the wind battering the shutters. You feel your fingers slowly thaw, then you start to sting, then go numb again. The fire crackles, low and lazy, and you sit. In wealthier homes, there'd be someone hired to do this, a servant, a scullery girl. In monasteries, the night porter kept watch, not just on the fire, but on the silence. But here, it's a rotating duty. Everyone gets a turn, even you. You glance around the room. One man snores with a wheeze. The goat grunts. Someone mutters something about a saint and then falls silent again. The baby stirs, fusses, then latches onto her thumb and settles. You poke the fire again. A soft glow dances on the ceiling beams. Shadows stretch across the wall, jagged and twitching, like sleepy monsters too tired to do much more than sway. You shift on the stool, your butt's numb. Your toes are back to being theories, but the fire's steady now, safe. This is when the thoughts creep in. Not bad ones, just thoughts. You think about tomorrow, about hauling water over frozen earth, about scraping frost from the door latch, about whether the goat's going to kick over the bucket again. You think about how long until spring, how many more nights of this? 40, 60, forever? You glance back at the sleepers, you envy them, but also not really, because this is your quiet moment, yours alone. You poke the fire one more time and whisper a soft prayer. Not a dramatic one, just let the flame hold, let the wind stay out, let morning come gently. Historians still argue how peasants scheduled night watches. Some believe people slept in two shifts, first sleep and second sleep, interrupted by an hour or two of wakefulness. Others say that idea is overblown based on specific regions, but across sources, one thing's consistent. Someone always watched the fire. It's part responsibility, part ritual. In some households, firekeeping was sacred, passed down from mother to daughter. In others, it was a punishment for spilling milk, for skipping chores. You don't know what you did to deserve this shift, but you accept it like a second wool tunic. Uncomfortable, necessary. You yawn, try not to blink too long. You know if you fall asleep here, the fire might go wild, or die out, or worse, spread, burn the rushes, the wall, the goat, you. So you keep watch. Eventually a hand rests on your shoulder. It's the host's eldest son. He nods once. No words, just, I've got it now. You stand slowly, legs creaking. You shuffle back toward your mat. The others shift to let you in. The dog huffs in protest but yields. The blanket is still warm. A miracle. You sink down into it, the fire's glow dancing behind your eyelids. Your duty is done. Now someone else will stay awake, listening to the wind, watching the sparks, and poking the coals like they hold the world together. Which honestly, they kind of do. You're half asleep, drifting in and out like a log bobbing in the tide when the whispering starts. Not loud, not urgent, just steady, rhythmic words murmured across the room. You don't even open your eyes at first, you just listen. Someone's praying. Not the usual kind, not the rehearsed our fathers mumbled at dusk. This is softer, stranger, older. It weaves names you've never heard with requests for warmth, protection, safe dreams, uncracked toes. It's both humble and magical. And in the Middle Ages, there's no clear line between religion and superstition. You sit up slowly, pulling your cloak tighter. The others are still curled in their bundles. One child kicks in his sleep. The fire glows low, a red heartbeat in the dark. By the hearth, the host's grandmother is sprinkling something into the coals. It hisses, sharp and sour. Wormwood, she mutters to herself, for warding. You blink. She sees you and smiles. Best not let the frost in. You don't argue, because tonight, the cold isn't your only concern. This world is full of belief. Not just belief in God, but belief in everything else. Saints, curses, forest spirits, weather witches, the old man who speaks to birds, the crow that circles the village and only lands on rooftops before someone dies. The church frowns on such things, of course, but in the frozen dark, doctrine bends. When the wind howls and the fire flickers low, you don't quote Latin. You reach for whatever scraps of comfort your ancestors left behind. You pull your blanket tighter and remember a charm someone taught you. Saint Bridget, keep the coals alive. Saint George, guard the door. Saint Agnes, warm the baby's breath. And let no devil snore. It's nonsense, it's everything. There's a pouch hanging over the doorway, dried herbs, garlic, and what looks like a bit of ribbon. You asked once what it was for. The answer, cold demons. You didn't ask again? Someone mutters in their sleep, something about wolves. Someone else, barely awake, taps the lintel 3 times with their fingers. You don't know the meaning. You copy them anyway, just in case. The goat sneezes. That might mean something too. In one corner, a wooden carving of St. Cuthbert leans against the wall. He's smiling. His foot is missing. A chicken probably ate it. Still, every night someone kisses the top of his head and asks for mercy from the wind. Historians still debate how deeply superstitions shaped peasant life. Was it desperate ignorance or adaptive wisdom? Hard to say, but in a world of famine, plague, and freezing rain, peasants took no chances. You've heard stories of a woman who buried iron nails under her hearth to keep the spirits of the drowned from coming in. Of a man who swore that if you put your boots on the wrong feet during the feast of St. Leonard, your toes would never be warm again. You've heard them. And tonight you believe every one, because when the temperature drops below comfort, below pain, into the realm of bone-deep dread, faith becomes less about philosophy and more about survival. The prayers are practical. Let the goat not freeze. Let the smoke not choke us. Let the wind pass over. A boy near you has a small cloth bundle tied to his belt. Inside, pebbles and a bone from a pig's tail. He was told it keeps away the coughing sickness. So far, he's not coughing. He guards that bundle like gold. The woman by the hearth stirs the fire again, adds another log with a whisper. Burn slow, burn clean, burn safe. And they're singing now, soft, wordless humming, a lullaby older than the village, maybe older than words. The kind of song you don't learn. You remember it as if you were born already knowing. You hum along. The room feels warmer, though the fire hasn't changed. You start to understand warmth doesn't just come from coals. It comes from meaning, from ritual, from that deeply human impulse to push back the dark with anything you can find. Smoke, stories, garlic, prayers. You lie down again, pull the blanket up, tap the beam above your head, because why not? The goat settles back onto its knees with a grunt. Someone coughs. Someone else shushes them. A girl mumbles a rhyme about St. Nicholas lighting candles with his beard. You close your eyes. And just before sleep pulls you down, you murmur one last thing. Keep the frost from my fingers. Keep the draft from my dreams. And if anything watches tonight, let it be kind. You're not superstitious. You're just cold. And tonight you'll take all the help you can get. You wake suddenly. It's still dark, too dark. The fire has gone out. Not low, not flickering, out. You sit up fast, heart thudding under your ribs like it's knocking to get out. The air inside the cottage is silent, unmoving. Not even the dog is stirring, and you feel it immediately, that cruel, perfect cold. It presses against your skin like wet linen fresh from the stream. It seeps into the gaps between your fingers. It slides into your cloak, past your layers, and nestles between your shoulder blades with the smug certainty of a frost spirit taking up residence. You shiver so hard your teeth clack. You're not alone. Someone else coughs, a deep, rattling sound. A child whimpers under a blanket. The host grumbles and stumbles toward the hearth, but there's no light to guide him. The fire died while you all slept. It happens sometimes. The coals don't hold, the wood is damp. A gust sneaks through the chimney and kills the last flame. It's not always someone's fault, but it always feels like a failure. You pull your cloak tighter and move toward the hearth, careful not to step on any limbs or livestock. The cold bites your toes through your shoes. Your breath fogs out in long, shuddering clouds. No glow, no ember, nothing. This is bad because now you have to start over. First, you dig into the kindling box. It's nearly empty. Of course it is. Someone used too much last night. You find a few slivers, a bit of twisted cloth, a half-burnt stick from 3 nights ago. You cradle them in your hands and huddle low, shielding them from the draft that never seems to stop crawling through the doorframe. And then you reach for the flint and steel. Flint, steel, strike, spark. Again and again. This part of medieval survival is not romantic. It is not elegant. It is not the noble image of a lone woodsman lighting fire in the wild. It's you, freezing and hunched, with fingers that barely move, trying to summon a single spark from 2 stubborn rocks, while your nose runs and your knee cracks every time you shift. Flint, steel, strike, spark. A puff of smoke. You hold your breath. You blow gently. The cloth flickers, glows, then goes out. You don't scream, but you almost scream. Historians argue how common it was for peasants to keep fire going all winter. Some say fires were never allowed to die, kept alive for months on the same stubborn coals. Others believe people let them go out more often than we assume, either from fuel scarcity or sheer exhaustion. One thing is sure, relighting it was never easy. You try again. Your fingers feel like someone else's, thick, numb, not even painful anymore, just quiet. That's when you know the cold is winning. You tuck your hands under your arms, breathe on them, flex your fingers. Then flint, steel, spark, it catches. A lick of orange, the cloth curls, you blow, it flickers. Then flame, tiny, precious, sacred. You place it into the kindling nest like a mother bird delivering food. You feed it slivers, one at a time. You don't blink, you barely breathe. It lives, and so do you. The fire grows slowly. It's not enough to warm the room, not yet, but it's trying. You coax it, shield it, whisper to it like it's your only friend left in the world. And right now it kind of is. Others start to stir. Someone gasps when they see the fire. A child crawls closer, hands outstretched. The dog thumps its tail once weakly and scoots forward to reclaim its post by the hearth. You add a log, not a big one. You can't afford to burn too much too fast, but the warmth returns. It crawls over your knees, your fingers tingle, your lips stop sticking together. You've done it. You saved the night, but you don't relax, not fully, because when the fire goes out once, it can happen again. You know that now. You keep your flint and cloth close, you keep watch. Outside, the wind howls mockingly. A shutter creaks. The goat sneezes. The sun is still hours away, but the fire is back. And that's all that matters. It's the middle of the night. Again, the fire is alive, barely. Everyone around you is asleep or trying to be. The wind has picked up, and it shrieks through the gaps in the roof with a voice like something torn. You wrap yourself tighter in your cloak. Then you hear it, a sound you didn't want to hear. Low, guttural, too big to be human, too close to ignore. A howl. You sit up fast, breath caught in your throat. The goat stirs. The dog lifts its head and growls. A soft, steady growl that says, yes, that's not your imagination. You've just heard the one thing no medieval peasant wants to hear on the coldest night of the year. Wolves. Not cute ones. Not misunderstood fairy tale anti-heroes. These are real. These are teeth in the dark, silent as smoke, hunger and fur wolves. They come down from the hills when the snows fall deep and the forests go quiet. They're not hunting for sport. They're desperate, just like you. You blow gently on the fire, coaxing it to brighter life. If it goes out now, if that orange glow disappears, you're more than just cold. You're vulnerable. The dog stands, ears back. He knows. His body is all tension and warning. You reach for the stick by the door. Not a weapon, really. Just a long, slightly sharpened bit of firewood you've been keeping, just in case. Well, this is the case. Your host is awake now, too. He meets your eyes. No words, just a nod. He knows the sound. He's heard it before. Once, 3 winters ago, a neighbor lost 2 sheep and half a hand. You wait. Nothing. Just wind. But the air is different now. Charged. Like the sky itself is bracing for something. And then another sound. A thump, soft, just outside the wall. It might be snow falling from the thatch. Might be. Probably isn't. You move toward the shutter and lift it a crack. Just enough to peer out. Blackness, snow. the faintest shimmer of moonlight on frost. And then eyes, two of them, low, wide set, glinting with reflection and hunger. The wolf doesn't move. It watches. It waits. You drop the shutter. Back away. The others are up now. No panic, just quiet, efficient fear. A mother pulls the baby tighter. A boy arms himself with a broom handle. The dog is growling steadily now. His hackles are up. You've never seen him like this. There's no screaming, no hysteria. You're peasants. You don't have time for dramatics. But you do have stories. You've heard about wolves that wait, wolves that test doors, wolves that send one runt forward while the others circle the back. You pile more wood on the fire, not because it needs it, because the light must not go out. Wolves hate fire. At least, that's what you've been told. You whisper a prayer, not because you're pious, because you're cold and scared and human. Saint Hubert, keeper of beasts, turn their feet. Saint Vitus, lock the door. Saint Martha, keep the children quiet. The wind roars. A snarl, close. You press against the door. There's no lock. Just a wooden latch and a bit of rope. You brace a chair under the handle. You glance up at the wall where your host once hung a crucifix. It's still there, crooked. Wolves don't care about saints, but you do. Historians still argue how common wolf attacks actually were in the Middle Ages. Some say they were rare, overblown by superstition. Others point to records of entire villages hunted, children taken in the dark, trails of blood and fresh snow. What's clear is that peasants feared them deeply. They were symbols of everything outside the fragile warmth of your hearth: hunger, wildness, death. You hear movement again, this time not right at the door. Around the back, the goat bleats, the dog spins. You raise the stick, another thump, then silence. You wait. Minutes pass, stillness. The dog relaxes first, then the baby begins to cry. That breaks the tension. People start breathing again. You don't sleep, not really. You sit near the fire and listen, just in case. Morning comes slowly. The sky turns from black to gray, then finally pale blue. The kind of color that looks almost hopeful if you squint. You open the door, carefully. Outside, the snow is unbroken. No paw prints, no drag marks, nothing. But you know what you heard, and you know what you didn't hear. Because out there in the woods, in the cold, in the endless white, something is still watching. And tonight, it might come closer. The sun rises slowly, as if it too is reluctant to face another medieval morning. You step outside into a silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels hushed, like the world is still bracing for something. Snow crunches underfoot. Your breath fogs out like smoke. Every surface is crusted with frost so thick it sparkles, even on the dung pile. Especially on the dung pile. Somehow, even manure looks magical when frozen solid. You make your way toward the well. It's frozen over. You sigh, take a stick, and start chipping. Every strike sends a bolt of pain up your arms, because the cold doesn't just touch you, it grips, and it bites. You finally break through, lower the bucket, and draw water. You try to warm your hands on the rope. It doesn't work. The water sloshes and nearly freezes before you get it back inside. Inside the cottage, everyone's bundled tight. The fire is alive, barely. The goat is back in her corner, chewing thoughtfully on something that used to be part of your shoes. Breakfast is leftover stew diluted to a sad soup, plus a heel of bread that requires an aggressive bite and at least one prayer for your molars. But your host is worried, because someone is coughing. Not a regular cough, a deep one, wet, like the lungs themselves are trying to wring themselves out. It's the boy. He's pale, lips cracked, hands trembling, even near the fire. He hides it well, but not well enough. Everyone knows what this is. Cold lung, that's what people call it. Not pneumonia, not bronchitis, just cold lung. It's what happens when you breathe too much smoke, sleep in too much damp, and wake up too many mornings shivering before your feet even hit the floor. It starts small, a cough, a chill, then the rattle, then the sweat, then maybe nothing. Or maybe the grave. Your host mother sets a pot to boil, not for food, for a remedy. You watch as she tosses in garlic, onion skins, thyme, and something green she kept from summer, pressed and dried in a bundle that smells like bitter grass and sunlight. She crushes it with a stone and whispers the name of the saint she trusts most. Saint Sebastian this time. You're not sure why. Maybe because he survived so many arrows, he might spare the boy one more night. The steam fills the room, not heat, just moisture. But it helps. Then come the other remedies. A cloth soaked in vinegar, tied around the boy's neck. Mustard seeds ground into a paste and rubbed on his chest. A hot stone placed at his feet, rotated every hour. Honey, if there's any. Garlic tea, even if it makes him gag. And always, always a prayer. Historians still argue how effective medieval medicine really was. Some remedies, like garlic and honey, have legitimate antibacterial properties. Others, like tying toads to your foot, have less going for them. You once met a man who believed keeping a fish under his pillow cured fevers. It didn't. It did smell so bad that people kept their distance. Maybe that helped. But today, everything is tried. Not because it works, but because it might. The boy drinks the tea. He coughs again. His mother holds his hand. No one says it, but everyone's thinking it. Please, not this week. Not this boy. Not this winter. And you feel useless. So you gather rushes from the pile and stuff them into the cracks in the wall. You wrap cloth around the window shutter. You feed the fire with every sliver of wood you can spare. The room warms a little. The boy sleeps. That's all you can do. Later, you go to check on the neighbors. Because sickness spreads, you bring a cloth soaked in vinegar for your face, as if that'll help. You knock once on the door frame. Inside, 2 children are coughing. The mother is boiling water. The father stares at the fire like it owes him answers. You don't stay long. No one wants guests when the sickness is in the house. You walk home. The air is painfully clear. Bright sun, blinding on the snow. But the cold is still there, lurking in the shadow of every wall, in the echo of every cough. You remember stories from last winter? 2 families lost their eldest sons within days. One to fever, one just went to sleep and didn't wake. They burned extra firewood that week. They sang louder, not because it helped, but because it kept them going. Tonight, you'll burn more wood. Tonight, you'll stir the fire every hour. Tonight, you'll say the old prayer twice instead of once. You return to the cottage. The boy's cheeks are flushed now, not in the healthy way. The mother wipes his forehead and squeezes your hand. She doesn't thank you. She doesn't need to. Everyone just does what they can. Because the cold is not the enemy. Not really. It's the weakness that follows. You hear them before you see them. Muffled hoofbeats, soft bleats, the clop-clop of worn hooves on frozen dirt. You step outside, breath turning to mist, and there they are, your 4-legged co-survivors. Goats, sheep, the single-family cow, a pig that seems perpetually offended by existence. Animals are part of your life, not as distant background noise or just a source of food, but as roommates, as bed warmers, as heat sources. Because when you're a medieval peasant facing the kind of night that turns blankets stiff with frost, you don't just keep your animals alive. You keep them close, literally, inside the cottage. It might sound odd, but this is common practice. You bring in the goats, you bring in the sheep, you definitely bring in the cow if she'll fit. Pigs are trickier. They snore louder than grandfathers and have no respect for straw boundaries. But their warmth, absolutely worth it. The family dog is already stretched by the hearth, legs twitching in some dream involving geese or pie. You give him a pat. His fur is warm, oily, smells like meat and moss. You forgive it. You open the side door and the animals trudge in, single file, with the weary confidence of creatures that know this routine. They've done it 100 times before. The goat makes a beeline for her corner. The sheep pause just long enough to sneeze. The cow gives you a look like, "Move, peasant," then lowers herself with an earthquake-like sigh beside the wall. You close the door quickly. Already the air shifts. Just a little, but enough. It's warmer. Not cozy, not comfortable, but the kind of warmth you feel in your knees. The kind that staves off the bone-deep chill that never quite leaves your shoulders in winter. You settle into your straw bedding, and so do the animals. The goat curls her legs beneath her and chews thoughtfully on something she definitely wasn't given permission to eat. The sheep press close together. One leans against the back of your mat. You don't mind. Her body heat sinks into your spine like a slow sunrise. The cow is a furnace, a breathing, twitching, cud-chewing furnace. You are profoundly grateful for her. Of course, there are trade-offs. The smell is present. It's not the sharp ammonia sting of a modern barn. It's something softer, deeper, more lived in. Like hay, dung, sweat, and old cabbage had a sleepover and no one opened a window. You get used to it, eventually. There's also the noise. The goat bleats once in her sleep. The cow groans and shifts. The dog barks at a ghost in his dreams. One of the sheep farts audibly and without shame. You smile, a real one. This is home. Historians often point to this arrangement, humans and animals sharing indoor space, not just as necessity, but as mutual dependence. You feed them, they warm you, they live because of you, and sometimes you live because of them. It's not glamorous, it's not sanitary, but it's survival. You think of all the ways animals help during winter. The dog guards the door, barks at wolves, and lends his body heat to anyone lucky enough to sleep near him. The goat gives milk, less in winter, but still something. The cow provides not just milk, but a kind of comforting presence, like a slow heartbeat that rumbles the floor. Even the chickens, when they're allowed inside, find warm spots to roost. They fluff their feathers, huddle together, and drop tiny hints of body heat across the room like biological fairy dust. And occasionally eggs. You watch the boy stir and reach out in his sleep to rest his hand on the goat's back. She doesn't flinch, just keeps chewing. Maybe she knows he's sick. Maybe she just likes being warm. Either way, it feels right. You've heard stories of entire families sleeping in the loft above the animals. Hay below, heat rising. It's clever, but your cottage is single floor, so the only way to benefit from the beast's warmth is to let them in the door. And the door, thankfully, closes tonight. You tuck your blanket tighter and shift closer to the sheep. She snorts and settles against you. She's warm, she's heavy. She's exactly what your spine needed. It's strange, this mix of humanity and livestock. But in the dead of winter, the rules blur. You're not farmer and animal. You're just living creatures with one shared goal. Make it to morning. You scratch the dog's ears. He grumbles but doesn't move. You whisper thank you into the dark. Not sure who it's to. Maybe to the animals. Maybe to the saints. Maybe to the fire. You don't care, because tonight you're warm. Because you let the animals in. You'd think winter would slow things down, that the cold would hush the world, lull everyone into stillness, give peasants a seasonal break from all the sowing, reaping, and general sweating. You would be very wrong. Because in the medieval calendar, winter doesn't just bring chill, it brings the church. And the church brings fasting. Today is a holy day. Again. You lost count sometime after the feast of St. Martin, but before the commemoration of the Holy Innocents. The details blur, but one thing stays brutally clear. You're not allowed to eat what you want, which would be fine if you had anything you wanted to eat. Instead, you're allowed barley, roots, ale, dried peas, possibly a boiled onion if God is feeling generous, and definitely no meat. The church calendar controls everything. Feast days, fasting days, partial fasting days, ember days, rogation days, Lent, Advent, saints you've never heard of, some of whom probably never existed, all demanding your stomach stay half empty in their honor. You wrap your cloak tighter around you and glance at the pot over the fire. The broth is thinner today, barely tinted water, with a few sad leaves bobbing in it like they regret showing up. You stirred anyway? The boy beside you sighs. Do saints get cold? He whispers. You don't know. Probably not. But if they did, you're sure they had better food. During feast days, things change. There's meat, there's fat, sometimes even pie. The village gathers, the fire roars, and the hunger quiets down for a few hours. But those are rare. Most days you scrape by. You eat porridge so bland you start naming the lumps for entertainment. You chew bread until it dissolves into a gluey paste. You sip weak ale that tastes like wood and patience. And you dream of butter. Real butter, yellow, salty, thick, spread on something soft and warm. You've had it twice. You still think about it. Today you don't get butter, because today is another fast. You ladle the broth into bowls. It steams. It's hot, at least. And in winter, that's half the battle. Warmth in your belly matters more than flavor on your tongue. But your host looks tired. Feast tomorrow, she murmurs. St. Blaise. You nod. St. Blaise, patron of throat ailments. Perhaps he'll cure your boredom too. Some villagers cheat the fasts. They cook meat in secret. They bury scraps in stews and pretend the taste is just a particularly robust turnip. Others get creative. A beaver was once declared a fish by the church just so people could eat it during Lent. Otters and puffins got similar treatment, anything to stretch the rules. You've heard that in distant towns, people use almond milk instead of dairy during fasts. Almond milk, as if anyone here has almonds. You barely have spoons. You finish your bowl, your stomach doesn't complain, it's learned not to. Later that day, a neighbor arrives with news. The priest is organizing a vigil for St. Blaise. There will be prayers, there will be singing, there will be more fasting. You sigh. You attend anyway. Not because you're devout, though maybe you are, in your way, but because the church is the only place that feels warmer than your cottage, even when it isn't. Inside, the villagers gather like moths. The priest's voice echoes off the stone. He speaks of suffering, of humility, of warmth that waits beyond the veil of death. You nod along, half asleep. Someone sneezes. Someone else whispers a curse. A baby cries, a goat answers. The vigil ends with a candle procession. You walk outside into the night, each person carrying a small flame cupped in their hands. The wind tries to steal it. You shield yours like it's a newborn. It's beautiful. Tiny lights bobbing through the snow, carried by shivering peasants trying to pretend they're more spirit than skin. Back home, you reheat the broth. You dip your bread. You try to be grateful. Historians debate how strictly people followed fasting rules. Some say rural communities were flexible, adapting to survival. Others claim the church's grip was tight, even on empty bellies. Either way, peasants were always aware of the calendar and always at its mercy. Because food isn't just food, it's a moral condition, a test, a reward. And in winter, hunger is holy. Tomorrow you'll feast, maybe, if the priest remembers, if the stew stretches, if the saints aren't testing you again. But tonight, you finish your soup, you mutter a prayer, and you dream of butter. Something changes in the air. It's not warm, not even close, but it's different. The cold still stings, still crouches in the corners of the cottage like a coiled cat. But today, the wind has a new sound, a softness, less bite, more breath. You pull open the door, squinting into the gray morning, and there it is. Drip, drip, water, actual water, falling from the edge of the thatch. You step outside, boots crunching down onto ice and mud. Mud, that glorious, disgusting signal that winter might be loosening its grip. The path through the village is still frozen in places, but patches of earth peek through. Wet, ugly, wonderful earth. You shuffle along it, careful not to slip, and see others have noticed it too. The neighbor's children are stomping in puddles. The dog has rolled in something it absolutely should not have. A sheep is bleating like it just remembered how sound works. And for the first time in weeks, people are outside without scowling. The host's daughter grins at you, cheeks pink but not frostbitten. Smells different, she says, nose turned skyward. She's right. There's something in the wind. Not warm, not yet, but promising. Damp soil, last year's dead grass. Something that's not snow or dung or smoke. You take it in like a meal. Back in the cottage, everyone is stirring earlier than usual. The fire hasn't gone out. No one is huddled as tightly. The goat is still grumpy, but less so. Even the floor feels warmer under your soles. And the best part? You can move. You can stretch without wincing. You can peel off a layer without risking death. You can breathe without your nose freezing shut. Today is about thawing out. The grandmother sits by the door, working a stiff piece of linen between her palms to soften it. Soon, she murmurs, we'll clean. You blink. Clean? Now? Yes, because when the frost retreats, so do the rules. Rushes will be changed. Blankets will be aired. The hearth will be scraped down to its bones. All the grime you lived with for months, the smoke, the sweat, the wet socks that never fully dried, it will be dealt with. But not today, not quite yet. Today is for noticing. You walk toward the field edge. The snow there is thinner. You see it, a green spike, a real one. A single brave blade of grass poking up like it owns the place. You crouch, you touch it. It's soft. You want to cry. Not because it's beautiful, though it is, but because it means you did it. You made it through. Not just you, all of you. The host father walks past with a half smile. Won't be long now, he mutters, squinting at the sky like it owes him interest on suffering. People begin to talk more. Jokes return, not good ones, just enough to be human again. Even the priest seems lighter at Mass. He talks of Lent ending soon, of planting season. His voice is less fire and brimstone, more seed and sunlight. He lets a child ring the bell twice. Nobody stops him. Historians debate when spring truly began for peasants. Some point to March festivals. Others say it was whenever the ground thawed enough to bury your foot without snapping it off. You think it begins today? Because something inside you, something you buried beneath layers of wool and frost, is starting to stretch, to open, like the grass, like the goat who is currently headbutting the fence post just because she can. You return home and help pull the shutters wide for the first time in weeks. The light pours in, not warmth, not yet, but light. It's enough to make the children squint and run from it like it's some kind of holy curse. You laugh, really laugh. And the boy, the one with the cough, he's still pale, but today he asks for more stew and tells a story and smiles once, barely. That's enough. You spend the afternoon gathering twigs for kindling, not because you need them urgently, but because it feels good to be outside, to be moving, to be upright and not shivering. You pass the field again and see two chickens fighting over something. Probably a worm, possibly a stick. Doesn't matter. They're fighting, and that means they're feeling good again. Life is moving, slowly, carefully, like waking from a long, wet dream. The sun starts to dip, and for the first time all season, it lingers. Just a bit longer. A few extra heartbeats before disappearing. You sit by the hearth, dog curled at your feet, goat back in her spot, a soft wind whispering through the slightly ajar shutter, and it's not cold. Not really. You feel it. This isn't survival anymore. It's return. The night is quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes with fear. The tight, breath-holding silence of frost and fire watching and wolves at the window. But the other kind. The kind that follows survival. You lie back in your bedding. The straw creaks beneath you, and you don't mind. The dog is curled at your feet. The goat sleeps without snoring. The fire is still lit, still warm. You can feel it in your fingers. You made it through. One more winter. One more season of numb toes and saltless soup and licking frost from the inside of the shutters. Outside, the snow hasn't vanished, but it's changed. Softer now, like it's second-guessing itself. The edges are melting. The icicles drip all night like slow, ticking clocks. The eaves hum quietly, the way trees do when they're just beginning to think about leaves. Tomorrow, someone will talk about planting. They'll look at the fields, still slushy, still brown, and say something about barley, about oats, about when to start digging. It's not time yet, but almost, and that's enough. Inside, the air smells like smoke and onions and something very faintly sweet. Someone had honey tonight. Just a little in a clay dish so small it looked like a joke. But you tasted it, and for the first time all winter, your mouth remembered joy. You think about the worst night, the one where the fire died and you thought maybe your toes would go with it. The night you relit the hearth with shaking hands and no light. The night the boy's cough wouldn't stop and the dog whimpered every time the wind slammed the shutters. You think about that, and then you look around. The boy's sleeping, peacefully, a little color back in his cheeks. His mother smiles in her sleep. You saw her laugh earlier, just for a moment, when the baby sneezed and scared the goat. It felt like sunlight. The house is still shabby, still smoky, still home to too many smells and not enough blankets. But tonight it's full of something else too, relief. You stretch out under your cloak. Your feet don't ache, your stomach doesn't rumble, your breath is slow. The fire's crackle is like a lullaby now, just steady enough to make you forget how scared you were to let it die. Historians don't always write about this moment. They tell you about famine, about plague, about bitter winters and failed crops and early graves. But they don't always talk about the after, about the first nights when you realize you're going to be okay. When the fire doesn't feel like armor, it feels like warmth. When the wind sounds like music, not warning. When the goat sleeps instead of pacing. When you can take a deep breath and not taste soot or fear. You've made it to the other side. It's not spring yet, But it will be. You'll feel grass under your feet again. You'll smell wet dirt and hear bees and touch water that doesn't sting. But tonight, you just rest. You roll onto your side and your cloak slips down. Just a little. And you don't pull it back up. Because you don't have to anymore. The cold is still out there. But you're in here. And for now, that's all that matters. The fire is low now. Not gone, just resting like you. Your breath has slowed. The air inside the cottage is quiet, soft. The kind of soft that only comes when everyone is sleeping and no one's afraid. The kind of quiet that doesn't need to be broken. The shutters don't rattle tonight. The goat doesn't stir. Even the wind seems to have curled up somewhere, dozing lightly under the stars. You lie back in your bedding, listening to the fire whisper, and let yourself drift. You're not holding your cloak so tight anymore. You're not counting the minutes until dawn. You're just there. In the warmth, in the stillness, in the quiet victory of having made it one more day. Tomorrow might bring rain, or mud, or the start of sowing. But for now, there's no need to think ahead. Tonight, there's nothing chasing you. No wolves at the door, no fire to tend, no herbs to boil, no saints to beg. Just breath and warmth and sleep. Let your arms go loose. Let your toes uncurl. Let the mattress of straw and creaky wood become a raft. You don't need to steer it. Just float. The cold can't reach you now. The dark is deep, but it's kind. And the fire, your fire, is still glowing. So close your eyes. Let the cottage fade and sleep.